welcome to All Steelers Talk, your home for everything Pittsburgh Steelers, presented by allsteelers.com.
What is up, Steelers Nation? Thank you so much for jumping on to another episode of All Steelers Talk live from St. Vincent College here at Pittsburgh Steelers Training Camp. I'm Noah Strackbein, joined by my man, Steven Thompson. Find us on youtube.com/All Steelers Talk or anywhere you get your podcasts. And today we might have some overreactions, but that's okay. We're going to talk about a possible change to the depth chart that's coming at the quarterback position, maybe the running back position, and then we'll dig into some potential cuts as the Steelers prepare for the 4 o'clock deadline tomorrow here in Latrobe. Steven, first, it's a pretty nice day out there in Latrobe.
Lovely day. Not too hot, not too cold. Cloud cover keeps the sun out of your eyes. I enjoyed it. I didn't have to sweat my ass off today.
It was. Anytime it doesn't rain, it's a good day here in Latrobe. I think a day after a game, we weren't expecting pads on. It was good to see the pads on, but it was overall, I want to say, a pretty boring day for the Steelers.
Yeah, I'd agree. I think you know that because we're digging for some overreactions, especially to that quarterback competition. But I don't think it was an overreaction. I think everyone saw what Kenny did at Acrisure Stadium in his first real professional game on Saturday. And then he followed it up today by going 10 for his first 10 throws in full teamwork before, an untimely interception in the 2-minute drill. But they came with a lot of second teamers and a lot of guys that we could see in the regular, offensive rotation this coming year. So when we talk about it maybe being an overreaction or not, I don't think it is, especially when you compare that to what Mason Rudolph was doing today. His snap count certainly went down. His pass attempts went down. He was rotating in with that second group for sure, but it certainly wasn't the kind of pecking order that we saw earlier in camp.
Yeah, it definitely changed. This was the first time I felt like Kenny had a grasp on that second team, and that's where we're going to go with this is Mitch started. He'll remain the starter, I believe, until proven otherwise. Kenny took exclusive second team reps for the first time here at training camp, maybe the second time, but really the first time that you kind of felt the change is in the air. Now, after his game, is one preseason game enough to say, okay, this guy's going to surpass Mason Rudolph, who didn't play poorly against Seattle. He just didn't play up to maybe Mitch and Kenny.
No, and I think this is always evolving, and there's always more practices and always more games to play. But this isn't the same as, Mitch versus Kenny or Mitch versus Mason.
Yeah.
This is, you kind of entered this season like it was kind of the worst kept secret that Mitch would start at quarterback for the Steelers, especially as you hit week 1. But I mean, this just makes sense to me. It just makes sense. Like, given the timing of everything, like if you can hold Kenny back from real game action and kind of keep him out of the fire in that way, but still give him enough reps that like you make him feel like a part of the team, you make him a part of the regular offense. I think that's a great way to approach this. Kenny's certainly Kenny has played like the second best quarterback on this team. So it just makes sense to me why they would elevate him to that role already.
What would it take for Kenny to be included in the conversation with Mitch? Because I know that's a very big gap. But what does it take to close that gap?
Well, Kenny would have to get a few years older. Like I like Mitch would have to get hit by a bus. But like we were talking about this a little bit today, but it's like it's a very extreme situation to get to the point where Kenny would actually be vying for that starting quarterback job. And I think it has to do with what I said before, a little bit of timing, just a little bit of like you don't want to immediately throw Kenny behind that offensive line and have him running for his life every game as the starter when you can let him sit behind Mitch, who's a veteran, let him learn the offense a little bit, let him get comfortable in both the NFL and this system and with this team. The reality is I don't think you're in that big of a hurry if you're the Pittsburgh Steelers,
No.
like your window is a little bit larger, I guess, or you haven't even opened that window. You're not the LA Rams. You're not paying people, you did not go all in to win a title this year by, amassing a bunch of free agents or talent like that. You can afford to wait a little bit. You can give Kenny a year to learn a little bit. So
yeah,
that's why I think this makes so much sense.
Yeah, I agree. And Mitch, it's not like it's not an incompetent quarterback. If it was Mason and Kenny, and this isn't a dig on Mason, it's just that would be a more pressing issue to say Kenny has to be the starting quarterback because Mason has been here. You've kind of seen what you've gotten out of him. Mitch is a former first-round pick. You could say whatever you want negatively about him, but he has shown that he is capable of winning games in the NFL. He might not lose you games, and that's really enough. That's all the Pittsburgh Steelers are looking for. We've said this time and time again. The Steelers are built this season to win with defense and consistent running back play. They have now hopefully juiced up their running back room. They've found ways to incorporate Anthony McFarland. Jaylen Warren seems to be coming out of nowhere to make play after play, possibly a sneaky pick for the 53-man roster. Najee Harris in another year, and then the defense looks much better all around. So it's a year to let Mitch see how far he could take this team. I don't think that their Super Bowl hopes were over. I don't think Mike Tomlin's sitting around going, oh, okay, we're comfortable with 13, 14 wins. But I think that they're comfortable saying Mitch could probably get us to 13, 14 wins and make us have a chance at maybe something bigger.
Right. Yeah, Mitch might limit your ceiling maybe a little bit.
Yeah.
But I don't think Kenny's going to make it any, Kenny's not going to raise it. You obviously, like you said, you knew you were going to lean on the defense and just get us to the playoffs and you can see what happens, Yeah. I think that's a good way to approach it. And I think that's kind of how they're approaching it.
Yeah. They're not looking to lose games. And I don't think Mitch puts you in a situation to lose games. Is it an overreaction to say that we're looking at it now where Mason's shot at this starting job might be over?
Yeah. I think it was over a little bit before that. I think it just kind of got solidified by the fact that Kenny played so well in his first preseason game. And is really starting to stack some good days at training camp here. I would say that is all but over in name.
Yes.
Whether Mike Tomlin's willing to admit that or not.
Yeah, Tomlin's not going to ever admit that, but I agree with you. I think that it is now Mitch's job. I think the quarterback competition as a whole has pretty much ended. At this point, it's Mason versus Kenny to determine who's the backup. But I would say that Kenny's performance, if Mason played to the level of Mitch on Saturday and Kenny played worse than them, then I would say this is a very valid competition. It might be closer than it ever was. But with Kenny outperforming Mason and Mitch outperforming Mason, maybe not even to a huge degree, but just to a little degree, that's enough to say, okay, we have our pecking order. As long as Kenny doesn't screw it up or take a step back, or Mason doesn't go out there and absolutely ball out, it's pretty much decided that it will be Mitch, Kenny, Mason walking into the season. Do you think we'll see that on the next depth chart?
Yeah, I'd have to imagine. I mean, just given the way the reps have been distributed throughout training camps, or at least through this week of practice, you'll obviously see tomorrow how it shakes out. But given the way that reps were handed out today or distributed today, I'd have to imagine we do see that reflected in the depth chart.
Yeah. Now, second guy that I think might be fighting a much higher uphill battle, but saw positive progression today. Jaylen Warren took first team reps with Najee Harris back on the field, which I thought was significant. It's not, Jaylen Warren's taking first team reps when him and Anthony McFarland are the only options. It's now Najee Harris was back at practice, full participant, and Jaylen Warren still taking first team reps. What'd you take that as?
Take it as what we've seen. Jaylen Warren's played really well with basically any team he's been with. There was no drop off, when he was facing the first team defense. I mean, maybe a little, he wasn't tearing everyone up, but we saw the same things. We saw the explosiveness, the quickness, the agility, the lateral movement. It's the same thing that we've seen from him. And that's the really good thing, is the consistency, even when he's taking a step up to first team reps.
Yeah. I think Jaylen Warren has been as consistent as it gets. You go back and watch the film. What I really liked is he had a really nice pass block on Saturday. He had a special teams tackle, which I think was huge. He needs to have a couple of them. Connor Hayward, I talked to him today, and he said he had 3, should have been 4 special teams tackles. I think Jaylen Warren has to get to that point where he's making multiple tackles on special teams in a game before we could say, okay, well, he's got a really good shot of beating out who I imagine would be Benny Snell at this point. I don't think they're going to get rid of Anthony McFarland, but I would think at this point to take first team reps is pretty much the Steelers saying, all right, let's give you a real shot to show what you could do. And maybe Benny's injury is a little bit more significant than we think.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, these reps that they're getting are valuable. Those first team reps are valuable. They wouldn't invest them in Jalen Warren if they didn't think it was worth it.
Exactly. That's the biggest thing is you're not going to give somebody first team reps if you don't believe that they belong with the first. Otherwise Kenny would have been taking first team reps just to see how he fits in the mold. You don't do that unless they're valuable reps, especially when you have a guy like Najee Harris back on the field. All right, we got a bit of an announcement. Everybody knows our Manscaped sponsor. We love Manscaped. Shout out to Manscaped. They're not going anywhere. Don't worry. But we did add a new one, and I'm very excited to tell you guys about it because our homies over at True Classics have hooked us up. New sponsor alert. Support for today's episode comes from True Classics. This brand new sponsor has the absolute best fitting t-shirts a man can buy. Finding the right t-shirt with a little bit of a dad bod is incredibly frustrating. Most t-shirts are either way too tight in the gut or look way too big and boxy. You're not in high school anymore, and it's time to upgrade. True Classics has already helped over 2 million men finally get a better fit at an affordable price. Our listeners get access to the best deal they offer for a limited time only. Get 25% off with the code ALLSteelers at trueclassic.com. Almost all men's t-shirts are designed to look good on skinny models with six packs, but most of us aren't packing anything but a few beers. Fellas, you are wearing the wrong clothes. True Classics tees taper off towards the bottom, but they fit tighter around the chest and shoulders. It's time to highlight your best attributes with a t-shirt you can always confidently throw on. Let me tell you, I'm a bigger dude. It takes a lot for a t-shirt to look good on me. I usually wear them baggy because they don't look good on me. These ones, they fit well. I got a compliment today. I felt skinny, walked by the mirror. I was like, ooh, who's that guy? It was me. I was feeling fantastic about it. Feeling very good about these. Not only are you finally getting a t-shirt designed for the male body, but the first thing you'll notice is how soft it is. Get ready to make a thrift shop run because you won't be able to go back to cheap materials once you try these. True Classic doesn't just stop at tees. They're your one-stop shop for men's essentials. Super easy and super to fill out all of your wardrobe. From polos and workout tees with the same flattering fit to boxer briefs designed with a pouch to keep your bulge nice and comfortable. All of their top-notch quality for reasonable prices. They have this dope pack builder on their website where you can custom build all of their essential products and save even more than the discount we're offering today. And for the big boys out there, they have a long body option for all the tall guys and a XXX option on all of their staple colors. Whether you have abs or flabs, their clothes look great on all body types. Let's stop beer belly shaming with better clothes. Yes, dads, listen up. The ladies listening know exactly what we're talking about. Big dudes, small dudes, my dudes, True Classic has you covered. It's about time you learn how to dress yourself properly. Upgrade your wardrobe with True Classic. Get 25% off at trueclassic.com with our code ALLSteelers. Free shipping included on purchases over $100 and 100% risk-free guarantee with a 30-day return policy. Stay classy with True Classic. Your dad bod will thank you. Look, I'm all about this. They got dope hats. I love a dope hat. It's a nice trucker hat. Gotta love a good trucker hat. Been rocking it here because it's 7 million degrees at Latrobe for some reason.
Every day except for today.
Every day. I wore the black today and I was nervous, but it fit well. It's super breathable. These things are like wearing a cloud. If you didn't check my Twitter earlier, they're like wearing a cloud. So shout out True Classic. Make sure that you go check out trueclassic.com and use our promo code ALLSteeler. Hook yourself up with 25% off. We appreciate you. All right, let's talk some Steelers cuts. Cuts tomorrow, 4 o'clock. By 4 o'clock on Tuesday, the Steelers will trim their roster from 90 to 85. It is a sad day in the NFL. You ever want to see anybody lose their job, but the Steelers have to follow protocols. I think we have somewhat of a feel of who's going to go during this first round of cuts. Then next week, they'll cut another 5, and then the week after that, they'll trim their roster to 53. big name I think I want to start with, and I want your opinion on this. Mateo Durant has somewhat dipped in productivity. He got hurt. That's not his fault. He had to deal with concussion protocol after taking a hit with his helmet off. Has come back. I think his workload has digressed. Maybe his play has as well. Is that a name you think we could see go tomorrow?
Yeah, I think so. He's definitely one of the leading candidates, you have to imagine. And like you said, it was really unfortunate, he can't control that injury. But as you mentioned, his workload has tailed off. I think he only carried the ball twice in the preseason game on Saturday. And just with the additions of Jaylen Warren and Master Teague, it's really hard to imagine where he fits in, particularly because he just hasn't made a splash on special teams either. That's somewhere where Anthony McFarland could make a splash. Jaylen Warren, like we talked about, has been kind of integrating himself into that role. So unless something really drastic that we don't know is going on, I'd have to imagine Mateo Durant's one of those top guys who's on the chopping block.
Yeah, I think he's up there. I would say there's a couple of big names that might find themselves gone. He might be the top of that list, unfortunately. Came in here, I thought Mateo Durant had a ton of upside. I thought he was the most natural runner of the new running backs. It just feels like the best way I could describe it is Jaylen Warren runs into every hole with the only purpose of, I'm just going to run into this hole and hope for the best. Mateo Durant runs like a running back. He's looking for cuts. He's looking for holes. Honestly, when you're an undrafted guy, that works sometimes, but you have to be incredibly good at that. And I just don't think that an undrafted talent carries that immediately. So you have to just put your head down and run into holes. That's why Jaylen Warren's finding himself on top of this battle. Do you think that with the addition of Master Teague, Mateo's above or below Teague at this point?
Yes. Yeah, I would say that. I just think Teague gives you more explosiveness. I think he's a little more talented. Durant, I agree. He did have some upside. I was, a little excited about him when I saw him on the roster. That was a name that I recognized as an undrafted guy. But yeah, just it hasn't translated into pads. The injury slowed him down, but he does seem to be kind of on the outside looking in. So yeah, I wouldn't be surprised to see his name called tomorrow. Is there anyone else that you're looking at who might be on the chopping block tomorrow?
Looking at the roster, there's a couple of guys. I would say there's some obvious ones, and I don't like to use that word because, again, these are the dreams of many men that are somewhat coming to an end. You don't love to see that. But I would say guys like Donovan Jeter, maybe Nate Gilliam are on their way out towards the bottom of the barrel. Jeter barely played in the preseason game. He's kind of on the bottom of a list of a deep defensive line. On top of that, I would say Gilliam has somewhat slid. He's struggled at center. You don't like to see that. Just guys that maybe might be pushing their way out to this point. Jordan Tucker's another name possibly at offensive tackle. I will say that there's a couple of names that I would classify as somewhat bigger that could find themselves leaving in this first round of cuts. Lyndon Stevens is one of them. I think at this point, the Steelers want to see what they get out of Carlins Platel and Chris Steele. They want to see if Justin Lane could do anything progressive in this training camp. So far, it's no. And I just think that Lyndon Stevens has struggled a ton. And at some point, maybe they just push his number out there. And another guy, and this one might be a stretch, but I think he's there, is Donovan Steiner. Has not had a good camp whatsoever, did not play well in the preseason game. I think that there's a lot of safeties. The Steelers at this point are looking to possibly keep 5 safeties, and Terrell Edmonds, Minka Fitzpatrick, Trey Norwood, DeMonte KZ, and Miles Killebrew. That's already too many safeties. So to put Donovan Steiner out there, I mean, he's kind of just taking reps at this point while you're moving Trey Norwood around. I would say those are two names in the defensive backfield that I could see leaving tomorrow.
Yeah, and that's the thing. When you talk about these cuts, it's the thing is it's only going to get harder. Like for these people who want to stick around, and we're not The longer we stay in this and the longer we stay on top of these cuts, we're not talking like the fewer bad football players we're going to be talking about. It was the same thing with Durant as you're talking about with Steiner. Like, there's just too many names that have played better than them.
Yep.
And so if you lose a step, even one day, 1 week, one rep, like that matters. That matters a lot when you're fighting for such limited spots among so many players.
Yeah. At this point, like it's like we said, it's the bottom of the 90-man guys that weren't even capable of seeing the field, which stinks. It's never fun to see, but you have to make the move. You know what I mean? At some point, you have to start creating a smaller roster. Another name I want to toss out there, maybe two, that might have a fighting chance to stay, but probably don't have a shot at making the 53-man roster. Tyler Snead and Christian Blake, the bottom of the barrel wide receivers. Could you see the Steelers reducing their wide receiver gap even after the losses of Calvin Austin and Anthony Miller?
That's a good question. And I'd have to say yes. Part of me doesn't believe the Calvin Austin injury is particularly serious. I think that they are invested in that guy. I think he's the guy that they really, really like. And I just can't imagine, I like Tyler Snead. I can't see it particularly. I don't know about you, but I just don't see it happening really. I think Snead might. And also just Snead, like, what has Snead show you anything particular that would warrant him sticking around past this round of cuts?
No, I don't think so. I think at this point, his fighting chance was Anthony Miller and Calvin Austin getting hurt. But with Deontay and Chase back, both of them will probably play at least a little bit of reps. I would imagine the first quarter in the second preseason game. Then you're going to want to see what guys like Tyler Vaughn, Steven Sims have for you, and you're willing to play them 3 quarters before you put a guy like Christian Blake or Tyler Snead out there. I mean, I'm not positive what Tyler Snead had 2 receptions for 10 yards, and Christian Blake had 1 reception for 7 yards in their preseason opener. They're just guys that aren't getting a ton of reps already. The second preseason game is going to be where you really push your starters before you rest them in the third game. And I don't think that you're going to put that risk out there.
Yeah, and like we talked about, we're cutting it down. The cuts are only going to get harder. Like we're running out of bad football players. Not that any of these guys are bad. They're in the NFL, and I'm not. So, but like Tyler Snead is running out of opportunities to show us that he deserves to be on this football team.
Yeah.
And again, with so many other guys that have shown you something. Steven Sims, had a couple catches. He, made some plays on special teams. Tyler Vaughn's had the game-winning touchdown and I think another catch or 2.
Yeah.
That's the thing. Like, it's not just enough to not be bad. You have to stand out. You have to be good. You have to make plays, and that's just not something that Tyler Snead has done.
No, and I think there's a lot of guys like that. And like you said, we're going to get harder. Those next 5 next week are going to be much more difficult to predict, and I think that there's real names out there that could see themselves go. I think that's when things get exciting, because that's when you see names come back. Like you see big names get cut other places, and you're like, oh, okay, the Pittsburgh Steelers are obviously going to look at that. I mean, they still need an outside linebacker because Jannard Avery cannot stay healthy. They might need an inside linebacker depending on who gets cut and how they feel about guys like Devin Bush and Robert Spillane's ability to start. Last year, they felt confident in Robert Spillane right up until the end, went out and got Joe Schobert because they were no longer confident in Robert Spillane. That could happen again. That's when things will get interesting. But yeah, I would say Donovan Jeter is a name. Nate Gilliam is a name. Tyler Snead is a name. Christian Blake is a name, and a couple of them. Just to touch on a question, 2 questions maybe real quick. The Steelers putting Calvin Austin on IR. I could see the scenario I see, depending on how serious this is, would be Calvin Austin starting the season on IR. That way they could remove him in 3 or 4 weeks, whatever the protocol is. And that way they could keep Steven Sims on the roster. That's at that point, you could you could make adjustments, maybe bump Steven Sims down to the practice squad, depending on how he's playing, or you make adjustments. I mean, maybe Gunner doesn't have a role anymore. Maybe Miles Boykin, maybe somebody else is dealing with an injury. You never know. But Calvin Austin is a guy I could definitely see start in the preseason. Buddy Johnson isn't going anywhere. However, he didn't have a good preseason game. I'd say Buddy Johnson has disappointed me throughout this training camp. You pointed out on Saturday that every time there was a pass play, he's just looking around. He has no idea what he's doing. Yeah. So,
particularly on that, I think it might have been the second touchdown of the Steelers. It was in the first half, and there's just a direct flat out to the side, and Buddy Johnson gets turned around looking for someone else to cover, for someone else to go get that guy for him. It was not a good look for Buddy Johnson.
No, he's definitely struggled. We'd like to see more out of him, but again, that's why they're hoping that Devin Bush and Robert Spillane turn into something, but we do not know. And just to touch on Calvin Austin's injury before we head out of here, I don't have a confirmation. I have heard what the injury possibly is, but I'm not going to say it because I'm not 100% with that source. So I won't put false information out there. I have heard from a reliable source that we're looking at 2 to 6 weeks, which is a decent gap. I would say at that point, you're looking more at 6. When the number is wider than a 2-week gap, chances are it's more towards the end of that gap. So I'd say 6 weeks plus maybe. It is a foot injury. He wasn't a boot walking around the sidelines. So we'll see what happens. I believe that we touched on everything. Trey Norwood is a dog. That's a great way to end it here. Thank you, everybody, for jumping on to another episode of All Steelers Talk. Make sure to subscribe to us on YouTube, youtube.com/All Steelers Talk, and check us out on anywhere you get your podcasts, the Steelers Audible Collection, All Steelers Talk Audible Collection. Make sure to go check out trueclassic.com and use our promo code All Steelers for 25% off some of the comfiest t-shirts you will ever wear. And if you're into hats, a nice hat. So we will be back tomorrow with Donnie. Everybody enjoy your night. Steelers Cuts. Make sure that you're checking out allsteelers.com for all your news and updates. Peace.